Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Tom Kulaga of the New York Times, and it's my great pleasure to welcome you to the first New York Times Food Festival. This is a food festival as big and exciting as the city that inspired it. All this weekend, there's the park, food tastings, live cooking demonstrations, and more just down the block in Bryant Park. Then there are the nights, 7 evenings of exclusive dinners at 10 of New York Times food critic Pete Wells's favorite New York City restaurants. And here in the TimesCenter, there are the talks, a series of discussions with the most interesting and vital voices in today's food scene. Following today's talk, we invite you to enjoy a free cup of coffee from Joe in the lobby and visit our festival lounge downstairs in the hall. There you can grab a drink at the festival bar, watch the other talks as they're streamed live, visit the Kitchen Arts and Letters pop-up bookshop for author signings and books by our featured chefs and journalists, enjoy a free scoop of the Flavor of Record, the ice cream flavor created by The Times in collaboration with Ample Hills Creamery, and much more. I'd like to give special thanks to the sponsors of the New York Times Food Festival, our presenting sponsor MasterCard, our major sponsor Uber Eats, our wellness sponsor Yogi Tea, our event sponsors Diageo, Sub-Zero Wolf, and Cove, our supporting sponsors AARP New York City, Badia Spices, Deloitte, and Resi, and our contributing sponsors Joe Coffee Company and REI. This talk is sponsored by Badia Spices, which is commemorating Breast Cancer Awareness Month by teaming up with the National Breast Cancer Foundation for the 9th consecutive year. Please join me in viewing this brief video message about that important initiative.
Since 1991, the National Breast Cancer Foundation has been providing help and inspiring hope to those affected by breast cancer through early detection, education, and support services. NBCF has again partnered with Badia to spread the importance of early detection of breast cancer. Through its specially marked garlic powder, it is supporting NBCF's efforts to help women in all 50 states through hospital partnerships. Join us in helping women in need.
And now on to our program. When Anthony Bourdain died last June, the loss was truly felt around the world. This afternoon's talk between Andrew Zimmern and Pati Jinich will touch upon not only the impact that Bourdain had on the worlds of food and travel, but how he paved the way for adventures yet to come. Please join me in welcoming Pati and Andrew to the TimesCenter stage, along with New York Times national food correspondent Kim Severson.
These guys. Oh my gosh, this is great. I mean, these two travel so much. The fact that we have them on stage here with you and with us is a real treat for me, and I've been lucky enough to do some journalism with them. I've done profiles of both of them, and then once that was in the paper, and they could yell at me all they want after that. Now we're friends, so that's been great. You know, when I conceived of talking about this, I know that Anthony Bourdain paved the ground, broke ground for travel journalism in the biggest way, and I think, and we've all been influenced by him. And so I want to talk to you today about sort of how either you pick up that baton or create your own, you make your own mark. But first I want to talk to us a little, because I know you're both influenced by him, and Andrew especially, you were close with him, and we talked a lot the day that he died. And so was he a touchstone for you in ways for what you do professionally now and personally? Can you, I don't know how much you care to share, but this is a safe group. I think we don't feel the love here, so.
He was the most charismatic man that I've ever known in my life. And was brilliant and curious beyond the scope of anyone's imagination. And as somebody who was like actually shared real stuff with him, it was a delight. We were always traveling, we were always away. We would see each other 3-4 times a year, once or twice at an event, once or twice where we knew we were gonna be in a city and we'd, you know, have dinner, talk. Bump into each other once a year somewhere where we had no idea and go off and hide and run away and make everybody pissed off that we had disappeared. But But I really think what Bourdain's, and we started our shows roughly at the same time. Food Network bought Cook's Tour and had him on Food Network. Then Travel Channel bought that from Food Network, kind of canceled that after a season and started No Reservations. When Cook's Tour was airing on Travel Channel is when I was shooting the first season of Bizarre Foods. And so the Tony that we know on TV was kind of about to burst forward. But what really influenced, I think, people like us was his first big book that came from a New Yorker article that became the book Kitchen Confidential, that I think engaged culinarians on the issue of transparency on whatever issue they were. It was no longer okay just to talk about how beautiful the radicchio was. It was actually the success of Kitchen Confidential, the explosion of that article in the New Yorker was not for us about don't order the fish on Monday. We knew that already. Its popularity and the huge oh my God moment was the seminal event where we went from talking about the quality of the radicchio, when we stopped being talking heads standing behind cutting boards and started to talk about what was really going on in places and in the world in a completely different way. The success of that gave us all permission to do that. So it was actually the success of the book that opened up my eyes to, oh my God, I do have permission to talk about the things I want to talk about in my shows. So I think that was probably the biggest piece of it for me. And then obviously, for everyone who came after, you couldn't help but be affected by the work that he did on No Reservations and then Parts Unknown.
Right. I think it changed a lot. And I think it came at a time where there was an audience ready to hear that. Like, I wonder if 20 years earlier you had been trying to do that, if food culture would have moved ahead enough for it to have an audience that could hear it.
Wouldn't at all. And I talk about this a lot when, and actually you and I think, discussed this last time that we had dinner together. Chefs 45 years ago unveiled a world of ingredients and freshness and an approach to food and a respect for American produce and American cookery, as we define it as this incredible melting pot food culture, right? And opened everybody's eyes to that. And that was their message. I call it the Alice Waters message. Lots of people were talking about it, but that Alice Waters message was a cultural phenomenon. It was a big groundbreaker because food is, to me, the greatest cultural pillar that we have. It's much better than math, and it's just incrementally, just for me, a touch better than music, although food and music kind of always go together. If you take away someone's beatbox, you're going to get a punch in the nose. If you take away their quadratic equation, nobody gives a shit.
I don't,
But if you take away bread or rice, there's blood in the streets, right? I mean, that's the stuff revolutions are made of. So when food changes, culture changes, the world changes. And our culture changed in America in so many different ways. If you think about, even public policy and assistance programs changed, right? When we started to put an emphasis on fresh food. It also underscored the class element, that eating well in America is a class issue. All of that Alice Waters shit is not for everyone, right? It was only for the 5%, right?
Well, no, I'll push back. Well, all right, go ahead.
Well, we can, but the duty,
you're the guest.
The duty now,
right.
No, but the duty now of chefs, I think, and food people, thanks to the success of, and I trace it back to Kitchen Confidential, is we are now looked upon because we touch so many different places and people within our economic system, our civics system, our political system. We are in so many spheres as culinarians because food is adjacent to everything, that our duty now is not to tell people that you got to be eating a better, piece of radicchio. We now can inform people about place and culture and history and really important things that are better stories told through food.
Right. And Pati, this is exactly what is in your wheelhouse. And you came to the world of food travel television. You were a policy analyst, right? You were doing other things in DC, and so when you came into, I want to make food television, I want to make travel television. Were you informed by what? Like, did you look at the landscape and analyze that in the way? I mean, like, did you look at Bourdain? What am I going to do?
I wish I could say yes, but no.
Okay. Hashtag honesty on this panel today, guys.
Absolutely. I came from the world of, being a political analyst and really focusing on trying to strengthen Mexico's democratic institutions and strengthen Mexico's civic culture, and really looking up to America, in terms of institutions and grassroots movements and all of that Mexico needs, but having a passion for what Mexico brings to the table, our cuisine, our people, our culture. And having met so many myths and preconceptions about Mexicans in the US, I really saw food as the most noble of places where you can share who you are and what you are. And I really see, now that I'm hearing you guys talking, I moved to the US 23 years ago. And as a Mexican, I see Mexico now as a foreigner because I've been away for so long. I'm so nostalgic about my country. But I can also see America from the eyes of a Mexican. So we live in this weird limbo. I see how America and America's palate has changed in the last 22 years, and you guys don't know because you're here.
Right.
It is so shocking. And Anthony Bourdain's path and career was always one step ahead of everyone. He was parting the waves. He was breaking the walls. I mean, it is incredible to see now. I don't think I know anybody in the culinary world that wasn't deeply shocked and affected by his passing. To a shaking degree. We were filming in my kitchen for my last season. We were doing the Baja season.
Yeah.
Nobody could work that day. People couldn't get it together. But I see him and the way he moved from the traditional networks to, having been on Food Network and then CNN. You can see the path of food, from being what you're saying, this beautiful thing that you now have to appreciate. We're not gonna just cook the hell out of these vegetables. We're gonna make it beautiful. And he was like, oh, now let's go in deep. And I think that his path, unbeknownst to him, has shown us the path of food and the perception of food in media connected to travel.
Right, which is now the place where you two are you're both hitting on cylinders that, the way food travel has evolved. And seems to me that both of the projects that you've been working on are really about food and politics and culture, and have an urgency to them beyond just, we're going to go eat some, let's just say bull testicles in some country, not to bring up your past. But anyway, Andrew, I know that you have a new show coming out, and I know that you can't say too much, but this is the New York Times. We ask the hard questions, and you've been seen around DC filming. With Jose Andres and many people. So tell us, what's your vision? What's the new show? And it's what, November it's coming out? He's mad at me now. I'm not saying. Oh, come on. This again, we won't tell anyone.
No, you sign a lot of pieces of paper.
Right.
When you do this. I guess, there's been a lot of stuff on social media, and people who've been on the show have tweeted about it and picked up what it is. So I guess I can repeat what has already been.
It's a terribly kept secret.
It is a terribly kept secret, but I am making a show for MSNBC. It does air at some point in the future. It is
November.
It is. Well, we have a big thing going on here.
It's a very exciting show.
A big piece of ugliness happening right now in Washington, and so we'll see when the show drops. But it's it's the most exciting thing that I've ever been a part of, work-wise, because I think it has brought everything that I've ever wanted to do full circle. You know, as someone who for 15 years has been a human correspondent out telling stories, I love going into favelas in Rio de Janeiro and showing people about conflict and strife, but also where the most impoverished people in that country are cooking the most amazing food. Right. And that the support system, a city of 400,000 in Rosina, run by an international narco-terrorist, is actually caring for the people who live there better than the mayor of Rio and the governor of that state and the then president of that country were taking care of the ordinary citizens living outside of Rosina. And being able to use food as the tool to tell that story was extremely important to me. And over the years at Travel Channel, I kept telling more and more and more of those stories, and they were less and less and less happy with that. And then the ratings would be good, and they were like, okay, we're happy. But I've always wanted to tell a more important story, because food is, through food, you can tell the most important stories. We live in it, we swim in it, we're in it, you know, multiple times a day if we're lucky.
Right, it's our cultural currency.
Yeah, I mean, and not everyone has this deep relationship with food that the centerfold of, you know, a food magazine is gonna, you know, present to you. It's different for everyone. This beautiful food revolution has left a lot of people behind.
Yeah.
However, I still say that the best mechanism, the best vehicle, the magic carpet for telling any kind of story anywhere is food. You know, you brought up Mexico, and, you know, we're friends away from here, and I'm a ridiculous, you know, goofball fan of what Pati does. And, you know, as Americans, we inhale other cultures first and foremost through our mouths. We appreciate another country's food way before we appreciate their dance or their music or their art. And horrifically and insultingly and to our detriment, the last thing we tend to accept are the people, right? We're struggling with that right now in America. You see it on the news every night when you have the leader of the free world talking about, what his viewpoint on black and brown people is just, he wants Norwegians to emigrate here. I mean, it's just a horrific thing to me.
Now, my grandfather was Norwegian, so.
We're very happy. We were very happy about that. But we know what that signals. But the fact of the matter is that Mexican food, and I've documented it, goes all the way up to the North Pole.
Right.
There's great Mexican food in Alaska. You can see this love and appreciation of the culture. And you were talking before about, being able to tell those stories through food. It's the most wonderful vehicle. And my hope is that when you eat a bowl of food, of a bowl of juk in a small little, humble restaurant in Queens, hopefully you'll connect more to Korean people. And if you eat a great, bowl of pho somewhere, you're going to connect more eventually to Vietnamese people, and they cease to be mysteries.
Well, and it works backwards too, because if you move, you've moved to this country from Korea, and you're like, let me understand the hamburger, then you kind of like, it's the entree also, although we have such a Heinz 57 variety of foods here, right? So it's like, which one am I supposed to pick to understand American culture? Right. Good luck with that. But let's talk, because you have really been very sly in how you've worked your way into this very issue. So, and I remember we were talking when you were doing a story on border food in Tijuana and the border food of Mexico, and you just, you see Pati's show, and she's like cooking for her kids, her son. In fact, your kids are in the audience?
Yeah, back there.
Hello.
I love it one day.
TV stars.
Them,
Yeah, and and I'm making when I'm doing this favorite thing, and then you went to the border and started talking about border food, and you just went right up to the issue that was happening at that time, right? You did border food, and now you have your show debuts today, right?
Today,
on PBS?
Yeah.
Well, like y'all can go.
Today's
And today's Sinaloa.
So
tell us how you went from, I'm just going to be this innocent Mexican cook in America cooking, it's all great, to like this incredibly powerful, almost subversive approach to your show.
It is so very funny, Kim, because I feel like I wanted to stay away, and I feel like I've come full circle without me wanting to, but now I'm really loving it and embracing it. I was a political analyst, and then completely stood, away from it, got into cooking, and felt like, cooking is the noble way to do it, and cooking is how really walls come down. And not only are you allowed to go into stories, but you're allowed to go into people's homes, So I started with the soft, and not because I wanted to start with the soft, but because one of the things you had asked us before we came here was how intertwined or how connected are your professional and your personal lives. And for me, the lines are completely blurred. I started the show by opening a window into the Mexico that I was missing, the Mexico that I knew, Mexico Sweet, Mexico City, Puebla, Oaxaca, the beauty, and then it was showing the Mexico that I knew, but then I was hungry for the Mexico that I didn't know. And once I started gaining the trust of my followers, and when I got to 94% of carriage in the US, and I have been scheduled to the prime times in the PBS stations, I felt this deep responsibility to jump into much more substantial themes and topics, because I've evolved so much too. So I was a Mexican immigrant here, had kids, they're Mexican American, and now I have one food in America, one food in Mexico, love both countries to death, and I feel like I need to be brave and take on much more substantial themes. So we went to the Baja Peninsula last season, and we dealt with issues of internal migration of Mexico. You go to Tijuana, and it's not only people that want to come to the US, it's people that are traveling from all over Mexico to Tijuana because they just want to find a way to live. They want to make it work. And we talked about that micro universe within Mexico. So there's migration not only between countries, but inside of the country. And I got out of it so emboldened, part of it because we got the James Beard for show. And and then last year we had gotten the James Beard for host. And I felt like I feel this must happen to you too, Andrew. You feel like the more recognition or awards you get, you have to do a better job. You have to get better at it.
You named it better before, because the awards come later.
Yeah.
And it's funny that you say that, because I think sitting here, 6 of the last 7 Host and Show awards went to you and I. If I'm...
Not that we're counting. They wanted to actually bring them out and have them in front, but I told them, I thought that was a little much, but yeah.
But the change, my point being, the change happened before then, and you hit you actually, I was like, I just jumped forward in my mind. When you were talking about the carriage and the placement in time, right? What you're really talking about is having the platform. Mm-hmm. And having the engagement of fans and audience. And once you have that combination, and I have said this very angrily about a lot of other people, if you get a platform and you get an audience and it's 2019 and you're not using that platform and that audience to make a positive change in the world and to educate people and to use that tool for good, I believe you're doing a disservice. I believe that there's people who come to Pati's show and my work for entertainment and always will, and that's great, and they want to pop the cap on a beer and sit down and, laugh at some of my jokes and, want to ignore that's fine. They can take out of it what they want. But I believe that we have an obligation as people who've been given a platform to not ignore the obvious that is lying right underneath our noses. And I believe that goes back to that, I believe Tony felt that same thing. And I think he was the first person who really said, absolutely not. I'm not going to sit here and eat this a bowl of French onion soup and let everyone think that there's 10 French people in the kitchen cooking the food. Because the waiter is French, the wine is French, the words are in French, the chairs, the plates, the silverware are French, but everyone in the kitchen is Central American.
Right.
And he opened the door to that kitchen, right? And said, there's 5 people from Mexico and 2 from El Salvador and 2 from Nicaragua, and that's who's cooking this French food at this fancy restaurant in New York. And I think that that's a responsibility that we have to be truth tellers, you know, and to not ignore the obvious that's in front of us. You can go to, you know, the border and tell a story about food and vendors and smile and all the rest of that, but then you're ignoring the 500-pound gorilla in the room.
Right.
And so that's why it's so important to do that.
And that is, but I feel like you're totally right. And I felt this incredible sense of responsibility.
Yeah.
Because when you earn people's trust, I mean, it is so magical because they're letting you into their most private space. You don't know where they're watching your show. It can be their dining room. It can be their bedroom. They're really letting you in. You're becoming part of their family. And there's this responsibility. And when it came down to doing this season, I thought, okay, where are Americans told not to go to ever? Sinaloa. Mm-hmm. I know so many wonderful people from Sinaloa.
But Sinaloa, because they were the drug center, there was the violence. I mean,
El Chapo,
right?
Narcos. Mm-hmm. And so I told my husband, I'm going to go scout to Sinaloa.
What did he say?
Mexicans, even Mexicans, point fingers at Sinaloans. I mean, they have such a bad reputation and such negative connotations. Even Danny was like, whoa, you know?
Yeah.
See, and I'm like, bye, you know, I'm gonna go, right? I mean, he doesn't know who he married to. Now he's like, what is this person I married to? But I went down to Sinaloa. I was fascinated. It was, I mean, the people, Kim, they're like honest, hardworking, so family-oriented. Sinaloa is this place, it has the Sierra Mountains in the back, it has 11 rivers that are mineral rich flowing into
the agriculture.
The agriculture, it crashes into the ocean. The land just gives. You throw a seed, a jungle grows, anything grows there, but it's not their, like everybody there is not El Chapo, everybody there is not El Cartel. Right. I came back fascinated with the stories, and I said, you know, everybody in the US knows Narcos, El Chapo. Let's tell the other stories. Right. You know,
some of the recipes you brought back too are just crazy. The food is beautiful.
The food is crazy. The ingredients are crazy, and the crazy thing is that not only Americans don't know it, we Mexicans don't know it. When I called my team, you know, my director and the production team, I said, you guys, I found our next location. It's Sinaloa, and everybody's great. And then an hour later, I get a text and, Pati, is it Narcos, Sinaloa?
Yeah.
You know, and then like
is there a writer on the insurance for that?
Yeah. And a half hour later, is like, do you mean Sinaloa, where El Chapo comes from?
Wow.
And I called and I said, you guys can't chicken out on me. I'm a woman. I have kids. I'm going to go film myself.
Yeah. Right.
But you knew what people who travel a lot know, which is the mythology that's built up around a place is just that, mythology. It's like the people who say, oh boy, New Jersey, tons of turnpike, you know?
I saw Sopranos.
People, yeah.
Exactly.
And people in Missouri, and I'm not all Missouri, I don't want to get a lot of texts or tweets.
Don't make me go back,
in Missouri.
Let's be careful.
But the thing is that unless you've been there, you know, it's the Garden State, there's the Pine Barrens, there's the shore, there's incredible towns and cities, there's, you know, kind-loving people. Tomatoes are insane, corn is insane. The food that's there is epic. You have the boardwalks, you have, so there's all of this culture, and when I've shot shows there, those are the shows that people are more surprised at than when I go to like Madagascar or do a tribal show in the Amazon, because they're like, that's New Jersey?
Right.
There's a mythology that's built up around all of these places, and that's the beauty of storytelling.
Right.
You know, is, you know, I have my same version of that, of telling everyone, here's where we're going, you wouldn't believe what I found there, and everyone's like, whoa, wait a second, for whatever reason, too dangerous, too expensive, too this, too that. But as storytellers, I think the thing that we have in common is an unerring nose for a place that makes for great storytelling. Because at the end of the day, we wouldn't be successful and people wouldn't be tuning into us if we weren't telling stories that people actually enjoyed and wanted to know about.
And also, let me say about the food, because it is, I said a lot of people who talk about how we have got to understand other cultures better, we've got to understand our own better, and we have a responsibility, and all that's great, but sometimes I do want to be the person sitting there just watching, consuming the show, and you guys have brilliant, a way of taking us in through the food, because you love eating, and we all love eating, and so there's this commonality. And in particular, I don't know if you've seen Pati's show, but she's got this, when she bites something, she's like, I can't even do it. It's just you're just, oh, that's amazing, and they want to feed you more, and you do this, and it's very subversive, I'm telling you, the way you do that.
Here's the difference. Pati has learned to eat on television and keep her mouth shut, so there's not food falling everywhere.
Is that?
No, she's very good at that. So you get the eyes, you get the smile, you get that, and I love it when she does that. Me, I'm like, shit's falling everywhere, it's going in my mouth. It's a very different thing.
Right.
Both good, both good.
Right, but different.
A lot of yum, a lot of
But how do you, let's just talk about the mechanics for a minute of doing food television, because it looks like you all just go and there just happens to be, the person just happens to be cooking this great thing and you eat it. But it's making food television is incredibly difficult.
No,
I was going to say something, So, in terms of it's gotten me into a lot of trouble.
Oh, really?
Okay, yes. Because I can't help myself because I eat too much. Even in my team, they're like, Pati, we have to stop eating. We have to talk,
Right, because you just want to eat,
Yes. But what I was going to say is that in terms of the mechanics, and another huge responsibility of making food TV is, yes, food lets us in. Yes, food brings the walls down, not only of the people you're interviewing, because you may be with somebody who doesn't want to share a story. That's a difficult, hard to tackle subject. But when you tell her, will you share your mama soup? Please.
There you are. Right.
And then it's also a way into people's homes. But the responsibility of giving people that you're interviewing or meeting agency to tell their story and not translate for them is excruciatingly difficult and very hard to understand. And for people to understand how difficult it is. I remember and I say this as someone who has gotten a little better in English. When I moved to the US, I couldn't pull one sentence in English. When we started filming the show, I translated everything to camera. That is how much America has changed in 10 years, Kim. It's been shocking to me. I moved here 20 years ago. You found a jalapeno in the store. Now you find everything. Right. People would want to go for tacos, maybe Taco Bell one night. Now there's Taco Tuesday, Taco Night. America has changed radically. The hunger and appetite for more, for different is crazy. That's why we're able to do what we can do. But when you go into foreign countries and there's different language, different culture, how much voiceover do you put over your stories? It's things that people that are watching don't think. So we started season 1 because they asked me to translate everything for camera. And then they would have me say, I'm interviewing you, you speak Spanish, and I would have to ask you in Spanish. Then you respond in Spanish. Then I'd have to ask you in English for camera. They were so worried about the audience. And then I would translate to camera. And most of what you saw was me translating in English and trying to be true.
Just nodding at you.
Yeah,
and
it has transformed into, because people appreciate it now, having me have the conversation only in Spanish with the people that speak in Spanish, because you have the genuine, the authentic, connections, and then they subtitle. And they used to worry about, people won't read the subtitles. People don't care even if they don't understand anything. They want to see the human connection.
Right. Well, let's talk about how you do this, and this may be more for you, white guy, than for you, but so there's
Well, first of all, old white guy.
Right. Well, I can't, being an old white girl myself, but anyway, but how do you, and Rick Bayless, I know, took a little heat, he was such an original, he documented with his little typewriter, traveled Mexico for 5 years, the typewriter's in the Smithsonian now, what he took his notes on, and really broke open parts of regional Mexican cooking for a largely white but American audience. And then I think as we're kind of going through more of a woke moment and understanding that maybe a lot of the lens of food media has often been white, and we're changing that, it's like a very exciting time. But how do you then not go in feeling like a colonializer? That's a thing. And even you going from Mexico City into rural Mexico, I know we've talked about, that's an issue, right? So how do you stay true to who you are and go in, and have you gotten more mindful about your lens on cultures like that? And where are we in this piece of culture?
Insanely so. But part of what's made that a little easier is that, like Pati, 15 years ago, our first season of Bizarre Foods, everything was me. We had translators because got dozens of languages going on in all kinds of countries. It's going around, and then I'm explaining it to the camera. Now, everything is subject, right? So that whole movement, right, about giving agency and priority to letting people tell their own stories has been extremely helpful in that regard. In other words, I'm there to open the door and let those people tell their own stories. So in a way, that's changed. But the big change for me, and maybe some of you can relate to this, I was going to Namibia to shoot a show 9-10 years ago. We were going to northern Namibia, what's a tribal territory referred to there as Himba land. The Himba are one of the protected peoples of the world. They live indistinguishably from the way that they've lived thousands of years ago. The women spend 3 hours a day getting dressed. They put this red ochre, this clay, and fermented cow fat makeup all over their bodies. They do their hair. They put on their jewelry and all kinds of different accoutrements. All of that is to signal from hundreds of yards away to anyone else they meet how many husbands they have, how many animals their family owns, how many children they have, what region of Himba land they're home. It tells their story so that people can trust each other because they're nomadic, pastoral people. They're moving their herds where the water is, right? So I'm doing research to go there, and I see that the Angolan government and the Namibian government have made a deal. They're going to build a dam, and the dam is going to cut off water from 40% of Himba land. And essentially, it's going to make the Himba potentially extinct. Now, I stopped reading at that point and put on my, grandmother's Upper West Side Bella Abzug hat, and I am charging, white outrage, white lefty outrage to the top of that mountain. And I know when I go to some of these countries, the foreign minister or the president comes out to me because no one's ever shot TV there, right? And so, I'm boning up on all of I am gonna let this guy know, and the head of the Energy Commission, and and I joked with the crew, the show is going to end with me chaining myself to a tree as you shoot this, because I will sacrifice my life so that this dam shall never be built, so that the Himba can be preserved and their people can be. Right. So it's day 3, we're living with the Himba. And my camera guy is up on a truck, the roof of a truck, and he says, "Oh my God, this is incredible." I said, "I think we have ostriches or elephants coming over the horizon, and they're morphing in the heat diffusion on the edge of the horizon." "Oh my God." He's like, "Get the big lens." We get the big lens up there, and he's like, "Oh my God, this is amazing." And I see, he's like, "Wait a second." And I'm like, what? And I climb on the ladder, and I get up on the truck, and I push him out of the way, and I look in the viewfinder, and these giant animals come into focus, and they're children. And they all have T-shirts on, whatever.
Motley Crue T-shirts, or whatever, yeah.
And they're carrying their SpongeBob SquarePants backpacks, and they've got Nike shoes on, and they're walking across the hard-packed desert. And I climb down, and the head of the tribe, the shaman who sort of runs everything for this one family group, I said to him through our translator, "What's with the kids?" And he's like, "Oh, the kids. Well, they go to school, and it used to be 25 miles away, and they'd stay there for 4 or 5 days, but the new school is only 10 miles away, so they go and they stay for a day or two and then come back, and then go for a day or two and then come back. It's just unbelievable. And the school has computers, and they have better books, and all the rest of that kind of stuff. And I said, wow, you guys, and all of a sudden I thought to myself, like, the kids are wearing Western style clothes and they're going to this school and they have computers. And I kind of looked at this guy, and I don't know why I said it, but I said, what do you think about this horrific dam that's being built? And he looks at me and goes, horrific? Is, oh my God, best thing that ever happened to us.
Right.
and I'm like, what do you mean? He goes, oh my God. He goes, we want to be we've made a decision, we want to be of the modern world. And there are those of us who want to stay behind and live this way, but now our children will have a better chance because now we're going to have an energy resource, right, that is going to provide electricity for this whole thing. We're really, really excited about it. And I'm like, but 40% of the himbo won't be able to be pastoral people anymore. And he looked at me, he said, but 70 of us don't want to be pastoral people
there you go.
anymore. And I realized that the moral of the story is, this is not about, I'm looking at it through old white guy lens. And it literally, that changed my life. It changed my attitude. It changed the inner way that I think about the world and other people. It was an amazing experience.
Have you had that similar eye-opening experience?
Yeah, absolutely. And I was going to say, it's the difference between going in there and translating, giving people agency to talk, and you being able to learn and just pass on those stories without judging, without admonishing, without bringing your suitcase of. Many times it's a very progressive ideas. It's happened to me as a Mexican. I mean, completely different subject, but I think it's going to shine a light on what I'm trying to say. I was in Tucson, and I met this Mexican family that makes the most amazing tamales, and they made Nutella tamales. So I tweeted a photo of the Nutella tamales, put it out on Twitter, and I started getting the nastiest responses from people.
These are the big
Nutella,
tamales,
like delicious corn
Nutella,
masa tamales. Nutella, like the chocolate hazelnut filling.
Not Nutria, which are the big rats.
No,
that was my show.
That's your show.
That's Andrew.
Okay.
Yeah. But so anyway,
just point of clarification.
That's how you can tell what you're watching.
Right.
It was actually
Nutria or Nutella?
It was actually Nutella Nutria.
Okay, delicious.
And kind of mole.
Yeah.
But so anyway. People on Twitter started screaming and saying, retweeting like mad, and white people need to stay out of the Mexican food, leave Mexicans alone.
So you were getting canceled because of the Nutella?
But it was like this outrage, and I'm thinking all of these non-Mexicans are telling us Mexicans what we need to do, and now we all need to wear braids and wear Oaxacan dresses and stick to iguana tamales. We are not allowed to eat Nutella. But the crazy thing is, if you go to Mexico, I just tweeted a torta I ate yesterday in Mexico City, which I've been eating since I've been 2 years old, and it has yellow cheese. Yellow cheese has been devoured in Mexico since my grandparents existed. We loved yellow cheese. Who said we can't have ketchup?
They want you to go all
it's being politically correct, Mexican, and they're encasing us in harder cases, It's damned if you do, damned if you don't.
Well, the authenticity police.
That's fascinating.
The authenticity police.
Right.
It gets pretty wacky out there. I mean, I think I get as well.
You've taken a lot of blows to the head, my friend.
Yeah, well, but because I want to be in the ring. Right. I mean, I've got gloves on too, so I'm giving better than I'm getting by incrementally a bit.
Yeah, some days you win. Yeah.
Some days, yeah. But yeah, it's amazing, and that happens to me all the time because people say, well, that's not the real thing, and I'm like, hold on a second. This is an 80-year-old grandmother in Malaysia whose family has made this dish the same way, according to her, for generations. This is how it's made. So this is what they do here. Right. So Mr. Malaysian tweeter in Los Angeles sitting at your pool, right?
Your beard
who's
wax.
second generation American, just
shut up.
Check yourself before you wreck yourself. But I will say this: the media has blurred those lines.
Don't blame us.
It's both the benefit. No, I'm talking about us, not you.
Right.
We haven't even touched that.
Okay, that's why I asked a question. But now, how do you have a thick skin about it? And I know we're running, I want you all to get a chance to ask questions, so just a couple more. How do you guys deal with getting pummeled on Twitter or social media?
I respond to the people, my friends.
Somebody could be tweeting mean things right now, we don't even know.
No, my friends and colleagues, there's a guy named ClayDog83 on Instagram who, his little glyph is a Confederate flag, and every other comment on his thing is, I literally can't even say the words here. It's so awful. And all my friends are like, why don't you have him blocked? And I'm like, because I talk to him all the time. And then they look, and he's one of the few people I respond to, because I'm like, Clay Dog, come on. You don't really want to talk about my son that way. He's 12.
No,
he has nothing to do with this.
Go after your son.
Yes.
I think that's the line.
And I'm just like, by letting the light shine on those people, it lets everyone else see, oh yeah, the hatred and the digital shaming and that sort of like gotcha-ism when you're really not sure you're right. I just think by allowing it to be in the sunlight of the spirit and exist means that it's going to dry out and evaporate. And if I block them and don't do it, look, I don't engage with the crazies, but you've seen me. I love having a good, at
sometimes
midnight,
I'm like, which one is the crazy?
Sparring with some of those people before I go to bed is a lot of fun.
Yeah, at the Times we just say, I'm sorry, sir, we're being forced to cancel your subscription. But no, we don't do that. No, please subscribe, we don't do that. I want to, just really quick, are there microphones? My friends out there with the microphones, can we set up a couple mics so people can ask questions in our remaining time? And
because we really like a conversation.
Right, so interesting. And again, don't start your thing with, this is more of a comment than a question. We will cut you off. And, and you can direct them to whoever, but while they're getting set up and you all are getting your guts up to actually stand up and ask some questions. So just quick, travel tips when you're packing. You guys are good packers, right? And so is there like a suitcase you love or something you always are carrying on the plane? You never check, always check. You have equipment and things and costume changes. Quick travel tips.
Crew, we have 12, 14 people. We have, 32 cases of stuff. I have 4 pieces of luggage. I like to have choices when I'm on the road. When I go away for a long weekend, I bring 2 bags. One of them is just shoes. I'm very proud of it. I don't care.
Because this doesn't just happen, friends.
I just like choices, because when I don't have choices, I get really frustrated. Now, if I'm going somewhere for a day, I try to do carry-on, but I like having all my stuff around, and I have my little food things that I bring with me, and all my goofy stuff.
For me, the more that time goes by, the lighter that I travel, the less that I need, and the less that I bring.
You just carry stuff for him when you're Really? So you find that you're just, because we traveled together. We went to Mexico City together.
And we had a little suitcase.
You were good. I was like, but you still looked much more fabulous than I did every day. And I'm like, we have the same size suitcase. How is this possible? Okay, people are lining up. We'll start and go back and forth. Sir.
Thank you. Quick question. So we talked about how you have your platform, and it's very important to kind of shine light on the truth. One question, we had the UN meet recently about climate change. So what role will your shows like yours in travel journalism play in terms of climate change impact to certain agricultural practices, the act of actually traveling? How do you see yourself shining lights on those issues?
So climate change, is it going to be thematic in their stories? Or are they going to do more stories that...
Yeah.
Okay, climate change.
It's just embedded everywhere in everything that we do. It is so apparent. I don't deal with it as a separate topic, but it's evident in every single episode.
So you're not more agua frescas because things are hotter. That's not really what you're... Okay.
But the people and the stories, they tell you all the time. It used to be that we used to harvest shrimp all the time, and it's so hot now we have had to bring oysters. It's it's ever present.
So it's sort of more baked into the narrative that you're telling, because it's the story that's there. Andrew?
15 years of traveling the world, 174 countries, hundreds and hundreds of hours of TV. Almost 1,000 hours at Travel Channel over that time. Every single episode, I bumped into a fisherman, a farmer, a maker of some kind who said, it used to be blank, now it's this. it was being beaten over the head with that actually got me to want to do my new show. So we actually have an episode on climate change. So the fact of the matter is that I don't call it climate change. I actually call it what it is, which is climate crisis. I'm not trying to correct you. Those are the words I use because words matter. Grapes that used to be harvested in September in France are now being harvested in late July. Enjoy your coffee and your chocolate bars. They may not be around in 25 years. Wild salmon, because of rising water temperatures everywhere from Alaska all the way over to Scotland and other places that salmon typically run, they're seeing huge number changes. The climate crisis in our world today is globally the single most important issue. And the scary thing, and it truly did scare the shit out of me. I got a chance to speak to some of the foremost people out in the field who are actually studying these bodies of water, these fields, these farms. When these people, scientists, like world-renowned scientists, look at me and say, scientists never agree on anything. We all agree on this. And by the way, if we literally stopped all the bad stuff now, for the next 35 to 40 years, we'd still be paying the price for it before Mother Nature caught up to it. Scared the living bejesus out of me. So I'm hoping that I will be doing a lot more shows on climate change because you can tell so many of them. The world is changing.
Okay, I'm gonna.
Excuse me?
Is this a November show?
I can't say when it's.
Possibly November. Thank you.
I can say
Okay,
November.
I want to make sure we get through questions. Go ahead. Thank you.
Hi. I guess regarding food media, social media, diversity and inclusion, who do you two turn to in terms of voices of color, women of color, LGBT? Who do you turn to when you need that education?
That got checked. Do you guys have a kind of a kitchen table council of people of different cultures and backgrounds and genders that you can go, what do I do? I mean, and you gut check it? I mean.
Yes, and I was going to say, I recognize you from social media. I think, right? Sí, I recognize you. Qué bueno.
Hola.
I had never met you in person, but we always talk on
That's
on
not
Twitter.
Playdog 83, by the way.
No.
I just want to be very clear with everybody.
I'm more of a K-Dog 84.
No.
Okay.
His Twitter handle is
That's
no
it.
manches, no manches.
What is it?
No,
No
And it's
mansions?
No manches.
Okay.
Which actually, yeah, sorry, kids.
I follow you.
No, but I was going to say, yeah, we follow each other. But what I was going to say is that Twitter, and we were just talking about it, it can get so judgmental and so nasty, and it kind of drives me a little bit crazy. Like, I feel like it is so incredible that we all do the most that we can to make everything be very inclusive and very diverse. But I find that within that, there can also be the very, very extreme that then tends to separate. For example, Latinos. There are white Latinos, black Latinos, brown Latinos. Who says that Latinos are only brown? Have you been to Mexico? Go to northern Mexico, redheads and freckles. Go to central Mexico, blondes, much taller than me. I mean, Mexico is we're just talking about Filipinos. Mexico is such a diverse, complex place with Asian, African, Lebanese, Jews. I mean, it's just so many colors. And that, as a Mexican Jew, and I'm not religious and I'm not kosher, I eat bacon every day as much as I can.
Not that there's anything wrong with
Nothing wrong with it, nothing wrong. But see, for example, I was invited to talk at a conference in the University of Houston, and it was about Jews of all kind, and it was called Black, Brown, and Kosher. And I've never fit it anywhere, you know? So I'm like, I'm not black, I'm not brown, I'm not kosher, I'm Mexican and I'm white. Can I please come? Can I talk? Like everything that I said.
So to his question though, what do you do to gut check yourself with different communities?
So I try to listen to all of there's a lot of people I follow, you, Gustavo Arellano. I mean, there's just amazing
Gustavo's
people.
great, yeah.
He's amazing. I think there's many people Mexicans and Latinos follow, as well as, you know, non-Latinos, etc. But I feel like I always try to check on the like mediate on the outrage and radicalness, because I feel that doesn't help anybody.
Right, so you kind of,
Yeah.
And what do you do, Andrew, just quickly?
Well, I'm super curious. I'm also super lucky. I've been doing this for a lot longer than most people. So you talk about Gustavo Arellano. The very first TV appearance that he ever did was on a show of mine called Border Check that hopefully I'll get to make again someday, that got buried by Travel Channel.
Hashtag I'm not resentful. Go ahead.
No, I'm not. But 10 years ago I made that. Gustavo was in the show, and so Twitter comes on. I just keep following all those people. Michael Twitty. His first TV was on my show 11 years ago. I'm doing this talk series at Copia in Napa Valley at the CIA, and I had people from La Cocina. I had Michael Twitty. I had Rick. I had Tanya Holland.
You haven't had me.
Not yet.
I'm not really upset.
So
But the point,
just because
the
we
point
have,
is you have to
just
aggregate those voices. You have to go and seek them out. And so people who are outspoken, who write the books, who write the articles, I seek them out. There are people that I follow that I kind of obsess over a little bit. I don't want to embarrass her, but the same person that you were talking about the Filipino thing, I actually sought that person out and said, can we have dinner in New York the night before this thing? You're talking, I'm talking. And this was a woman who I have the utmost respect for, who speaks with an authority as a woman of color, a young woman of color, that I do not have. So I try to, if you don't immerse yourself in it, you have no self-awareness, and you can't be intentional about the messages that you can tell. Right? And so it's very, very conscious.
let's go ahead.
I have a very different question.
Thank you.
Andrew and Pati, one of the most engaging, I've been watching your shows for years, like 10, 15 years. One of the most engaging things I find about your shows is when you guys go into a family's house and they always cook for you. Can you shed some light on how do you guys go about finding these families, figuring out the menu and things like that? I'm just really
That's a good question.
Friends of friends. I mean, because we have to cast those people, because you want to make sure that they're just conversing, they're open to having cameras, and you don't want to bring a camera into a home and surprise them to find out that no one wants their picture taken, right? So it's not as, we don't go knocking on street doors, but we send our scouts and our fixers and stuff to go find an average family. And what we also found, it just pops in my head. In Ecuador, there was a farmer. I was doing a farming thing with him. He was teaching me the Guatemalan slingshot. We went out and hunted squirrels with it. And we said, can we go tomorrow and film a food thing with your family? Because he was such a great character. We wanted to keep him around for another act. He's like, no. My family, my son is terrible, and my wife she's not really speaking to me right now, but my girlfriend's family, this is a true story. And people look at this, the family meal from our Guatemala show in Antigua, with the woman and I start crying together because she's talking about respect and their family and their food and their traditions, was the farmer's girlfriend and her family. You sometimes find people along the way and it's just magic, and other times it's casting. But what the great lesson that it's taught me is you can go around the world 1,000 times, and sharing a meal with other people, you're always closer after having spent time at a table than in any other type of experience. We have rarely had a dud, I think, for that
Pati,
reason.
what do you do?
Yeah, we don't. So it's a PBS show. I guess we have less funding, so we can't go around casting. But
Right. Hashtag budgets. Okay.
hashtag
But she makes so much more money.
Right.
Right. But what I was going to say, it is we scout. So I scout, then my director scouts for which places we want to go to, and then it is word of mouth, or with me it is, and my family knows that, it's no tengo pelos en la lengua. Like, if I'm talking to you and I like what you're cooking, I'll say, can you show me, can we go to your house? And
Yeah.
Same with us.
I think, I don't know, like, I think there's something in me, like I'm just open
It's
all
your
the time.
superpower.
People
Yeah.
let me in. I mean, and people will tell me, oh, they've never had anyone in their house. She's a witch. She's poisoned people. She's like, what? They let me in, and maybe it's because I don't give them a choice.
Right. Okay.
I'm dying
It's funny
for
though,
them.
because you were talking about the tongue. We've been shooting in butcher shops in the central Ethiopia, where it was a butcher shop. They're just cutting animals on a table in the sun. And there's someone buying a lot of food, and we just started talking to them, and they will often invite us because people are gracious. They want people to see that they're just like you and me.
Right.
And I think I feel like my series has improved. So if somebody hasn't watched my show, which I know it's many of you, but you are gonna watch after
Especially
this
the
conversation,
Sinola. Yeah.
just watch the last season because the past weren't that great. Don't watch 1 and 2 because they were terrible. But I feel like the series has gotten so much better because we've become so much more spontaneous. In the beginning, the team had to really wrangle me and say, Pati, we don't have time for that. Now they know they can't rein me in. So, so we're just going with,
Here's the dirty secret, and this is really true. It takes you 8-10 hours of produced TV just to figure out what you do and don't want to do.
Right.
You have to hope that the people that you're working with and for have the patience and want to invest in you, knowing that, okay, we may be in one direction during this first 6, 8, 10 episodes. The first season of Bizarre Food, the first 10 episodes was a huge, I don't even want to say the word. People like them. Some of the shows are really good. A couple of them got me on the Jay Leno show where they were so hysterical, but it was terrible television. It took us into the second season before we figured out what we were doing, and then you start to hit a stride where you get that balance, and it takes a while, and kind of like professional sports, even though you're playing as a rookie, the coaches, you need good coaches who are like, you're gonna make mistakes, but as a second-year player, you're gonna be a rock star.
And your team is crucial. So for example, they may say, this is the best person that makes the chilorio and she is the queen of chilorio, you go with her. But then when you're there, you see this happened to me, and the sister was making the most incredible cookies, and they're like, no, we weren't gonna do cookies. And I'm like, but look at those cookies.
We're doing the cookies.
We're doing the cookies.
We're doing the cookies.
You go, and you have to be agile enough to
That's
move.
the beauty of an unscripted show.
Yes.
Right. Okay, thank you. Yes.
Hi, my question has to do with the nature of travelers.
Can you just get up on the microphone a little bit?
The nature of travelers, the personalities. Pati, you mentioned that there's this incessant need to find more. And I fear that Bourdain left us because he couldn't find what he was looking for. And for those of us who are still looking, what advice would you give?
Oh my gosh, that question just made me want to cry. I don't know, because I wasn't a friend of Bourdain. I am the biggest fan. I don't know if he left us because he couldn't find more. I don't know if he left us because he was finding so much. I don't know. I feel like people that have this knack of connecting and we can be very intense.
Do you two travel because you're looking for more? Why are you traveling so much? Why do you keep doing this?
It's very complex. People who choose to leave us, that's not their problem, it's their solution. And I hope not just for Tony, but for all those people that wherever it is that they're going, they're better and they're at peace. A lot of us are seeking answers to a lot of things in our lives. And at some point, I hope everyone finds them and gets grounded enough so that they can be happy and have made themselves useful here on this planet and feel that their lives have meant something. At the end of the day, our job here on Earth is to love each other and to make this world a better place. That's why we're here. And if you spend too much time seeking, you might want to think about the idea that life isn't about questions and answers. It's more about doing. We are not human beings, we're human doings. We, in this world, have a tremendous opportunity to actually be swimming and be of life. The only fish that are floating are dead. And I would encourage anyone who thinks of themselves as permanently seeking or constantly finding themselves in a place where they're always uncomfortable everywhere, to be transparent and honest, to talk to somebody about, because those kind of issues are very important. And we all have different makeups. I travel a lot because I want to keep things moving so I can ignore the real problems that I have in life. I mean, so I'm very happy doing that kind of thing. And I have to force myself to slow down and address the things that are most important in life. So it's a very careful balance. And I am blessed that I have a spiritual foundation in my life that grounds me and allows me to have some balance.
Do you have a thought on that? Thank you, Andy.
Yes. When I was in college, I had a professor that I was very good friends with, and I used to talk about all these. I'm an insanely curious person, like to a crazy degree. You know, my kids laugh at home when I'm invited to Wichita, Little Rock, wherever, like to go give a talk, or to the PBS station. I'll go anywhere I haven't been because I want to get there. I want to meet the people. I want to see the place. I want to learn those stories. And so there's the curiosity, and then there's the intensity. You know, sometimes I feel, and I've told this to friends, I feel like my body is too small to hold the intensity of my emotions, you know? And I feel like there's this tug and pull, but this teacher that I was telling you about, he told me, Patti, we all have these little, ¿cómo se dice amortiguador? I always ask my husband about this question. These like elastic, you know, the car has this spring. So when you go up in Mexico, I mean, here in the US, you don't have that many bumps.
Shock absorber.
Yes, shock absorber. or springs. So many times they keep you moving, but many times they throw you off, and many times they're flat. And it's a thing of balance, you know? And for me, traveling is a way of satiating that curiosity, but also making me feel helpful.
Have you heard of FOMO?
All the time. I live in FOMO.
I have what I call funk.
Okay, fear of missing out is FOMO.
And for me, it's fear of not knowing. Okay. I want to know everything. I have to know everything. It drives me crazy to not know something or see something for myself. And it was my ex-wife would say to me that she'd recommend something like, oh, this is a great water. And then I would have to like research it. And she's like, don't you trust me? I mean, it's because I have to know, I have to decide for myself. It's something that doesn't suit me very well in my personal life, but in my professional life suits me extremely well.
I am getting the sign that I have to wrap up, and I'm so sorry you guys have questions here, but...
Can we do a rapid fire round? Can we do a rapid fire round?
Okay, but that...
We'll be fast.
You have to be rapid fire.
No, because these people waited so we can go boom, boom, boom.
Okay, but...
Boom.
Holding you to a rapid fire.
Severson, Kim.
All right. Okay, quick.
I'd like to hear how you each found comfort after you learned of Anthony's passing.
Oh, God, we can't rapid fire that.
I was on the phone with her. I worked. I shot that day. I did CNN specials that night. I woke up in Philadelphia. I had slept late that day, and there were 400 messages on my phone. My phone was exploding, and I immediately thought something's happened to my child. And I hit the button, and the first thing that popped up were the news alerts, and I saw the name, and actually there were 4 or 5 food media types.
I mean, I think I was reporting too, because I was up at 6 in the morning, and I think you were one of the first people I interviewed talking
so
about that.
and I worked, and that because Tony would have, I wore the shoes that he gave me. I actually had them with me because I carry a bag of shoes.
All right, Patti.
I think there's no comfort. I think he's shaken the world to a degree that he didn't imagine, and I think it still shakes us all.
Thank you. Okay, rapid fire.
Yeah, so given the transition to streaming and the changing way in which people are consuming content, how do you think that's affecting the way we're telling food stories?
That is a crucial question that we needed to talk about because, okay, I'll be super fast.
Yeah.
Because of the fast access, the explosion of platforms, I think there has to be a consolidation at some point. You have Netflix, Hulu, HBO Plus, the Quibi, the Amazon, etc. I think it is incredible for people to have all of this access. I think it's given a lot of voices. It's made the field much more democratic. It's made it very chaotic. And for people in our field, I think it throws us off. I mean, it definitely throws me off.
It went boom, and there's it democratized it, and that's good, and 1,000 more voices, and then it's going to constrict because not all those voices are good storytellers and all the rest of that. And I think people will find you, whether you're on a network, a cable network, or streaming somewhere yourself.
Right, because quality will always rise up.
Always.
Okay, rapid fire, my friend. And who's under the hat over there?
This is my son, PJ.
Hey.
What's up?
Pati, I love you. This question and compliment is for Andrew. Andrew, my name is Peter, right? Together we've been fighting hunger. We're from Jamaica. We have a project that Forbes just called possibly the answer to the global hunger crisis, inspired by you.
Thank you.
My question is, have you stumbled upon a bizarre food that you think is most sustainable, that you think should be introduced to everyday or mainstream diet?
Sweet potato vines. I talk about it all the time. And they can grow in countries like Haiti, where it could be a farm, where food is an economic development program. It's an international security issue. I've talked about this with people at the State Department. You put people in a hotbed in Afghanistan, Iran, the Middle East, producing food, give them jobs. People will stay in towns. Those towns will come back alive, whether it's on a reservation, on the Tohono O'odham Reservation in Arizona that's the size of Connecticut. You put food projects down there, it comes alive. Do it in Haiti, do it in Jamaica, it comes alive. Sweet potato vines in those environments can grow a foot a day. They're delicious. The Japanese pay a fortune for it. Little tiny fish that are $40 a piece in Skiji Market are used as bait in South Africa.
We've created what we call the most valuable produce scoring tool, and on that scoring tool, sweet potato ranks one of the highest.
One of the highest.
All right, sweet potato vines. Thank you.
Yeah.
Bye, PJ. Okay.
Glad I got that right.
Yeah. Are you ready to take us home? Last question?
Sure. Okay. Originally, my question was a little bit larger, but for the sake of time, I would just like each of you to express one single thing that we can all do in here to be better tourists.
Good question. Thank you.
How to be a better tourist. The easy answer is travel with an open heart, right?
Come hungry.
But how does that happen? How do you do that? How do you do that, right? And I think the tool to do that, and I've written about this a lot, is go to the last stop on the subway, right? Don't go, if you travel to Japan, great, go to Tokyo, the plane lands there, and the flight's cheaper. But go all the way to the north or all the way to the south and work your way back. Go to the last stop on the subway. It will force you to take risks that you would not do. Because in Tokyo, you're going to find someone who speaks English, and it's going to be easy. Go to the last stop in the subway. You have to ask questions. You have to be more curious. You have to stop being risk averse. You have to knock on doors to find a room for the night. I think we need to push ourselves. We have lost that pioneering toolkit that you can only find when you're traveling and then export it back into your home life. But I think the best way is to go to the furthest place you can.
All right, Patti?
I was going to say, come hungry, try to leave that baggage of preconceptions that you have about that country behind, and talk to people. I think People from all countries love it when a foreigner comes, and even if you don't speak the language and they see you trying a little, I love to go to wherever the taxi drivers tell me to go to.
Yeah.
Usually those are the best spots.
It's not about food. It's about people. We would tell the same
And their
stories using
experience.
hardware store items.
Yeah.
Just to talk. It just happens that we like food.
It would
more
not be
than-
as delicious.
Probably not.
Can we give them a big hand? Thank you.